Sound issue.
Thank you, everyone.
Give a show. Yeah, please do.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to call the Community Planning Committee meeting for October 16th. I will call this meeting to order. Committee, any comments on the agenda? I have no changes myself or additions other than the pink that we received. We'll do that in correspondence. So, motion to adopt the agenda, Mary Little, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thank you very much. So we will have a presentation tonight on short-term rentals. Now, what I'd like to do is to do the presentation. We'll go to public participation, and then later in the agenda, there is a place for council to talk about next steps if we so chose. I'm going to pick up a theme from Councillor Epp and just mention that we should decide what action we want from this. And, you know, a typical thing might be we ask staff for a report on options or something we decide to. So, okay, so with that, I will do my presentation. Tina's not here tonight, Ms. Hanson, so I'm going to go as long as I want to. Okay, so short-term rentals in Machosen. And the reason why we're doing this, it has been an issue in the past, and came to a head in 2018 where residents who were facing disruptions from short-term rentals got your council at that time, and there was a policy change that was made. So, but where it is now, part of the reason is when we wrote a letter to the Housing Minister, Ravi Kahlon, just after the policy statement came out, the Homes for People policy statement, we made a note that Machosen is in a special case in terms of more dense housing being developed and liberalization, if you will, of zoning requirements. And so one of the things, a few of the things we said with this is we have no sewers. Many of us are in Bell, so there's carrying capacity issues there. And we're not well connected to transit, and we're some distance from job centers.
I'm sorry, I just got a text that you can't be heard very well.
Oh, darn it. Okay. Okay, I will sit down. Thank you.
Can be heard.
Okay, yeah, darn. Okay, thanks very much.
You could hold the mic.
Not really. Yeah. Okay. So with that, we also said that we would look at rural housing policies, including how we dealt with short-term vacation rentals. And so this is part of it. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so here's what we're going to do in terms of the review of the presentation. So the broader context of STRs, background on Machosen's approach, an outline in what is known about STRs in Machosen, and review action from other jurisdictions, and also some discussion points. Now I have to say, if you had an earlier version of this presentation, please throw it in the ground, drive over it 3 times, and then put it in the wastebasket. This is an updated presentation that, based on some information that I've received over the weekend and just over the last few days, and of course there's a big announcement today as well. Okay, so what are short-term rentals? Typical, we all know what they are. We probably all stayed in them. So it's a rental of a home or room or an accessory building for stays of less than 30 days. There are 2 big platforms, as everyone knows: Verbo, vacation rental by owner, which is called, and Airbnb. Airbnb started in 2007. The story is a bit famous, how these people in San Francisco had a room, they realized that they could rent it out, and that took off from there. So one thing, the concerns, but key thing here, there was a significant focus on STRs being in the context of a principal residence, your principal residence, and this has come up a number of times in this presentation. So many of the concerns have come because it has moved beyond that, and there are now commercial operators who are buying. The stories are legion about people who buy up whole floors of apartment buildings and lease them out. These are called ghost hotels, and people who buy homes and also rent them out as well. So clearly they are not their principal residents, but they're finding STRs are big business. Okay, so the concern about STRs, and globally, this is not a Vancouver Island problem or a BC problem, it is a global problem. And STRs have proliferated during a time of increasingly more expensive and less available long-term rentals. And we are now clearly in a crisis within the country as well. And so here's a quote from, there's a study group at McGill, and they've done reports on many jurisdictions, including British Columbia. They did one in 2022, and then also updated that just this last summer. Again, they say the pattern is clear. Neighborhoods with higher prevalence of commercial short-term rentals have higher rents. One of the things they point out is that if there had not been rentals, STRs, renters probably would have saved upwards of $2 billion from, I think the date was 2018 or something like that. So what these researchers found is that there's something in the order of almost 17,000 housing units as of July 2023 that have been taken off the long-term rental market because of short-term vacation rentals. So
Just in BC.
just in BC, yeah. Okay. And one of the things they found out as well, is they believe they have, is that provincially the STR market is dominated by large commercial enterprises. And they say that 10% of the owners make something like 40% of the profits. So that's, again, it's moved from that principal residence, individuals, to a big business, essentially. Okay. So chosen and short-term rentals. Okay. So again, rules for the first time were introduced in 2018, and this is just an excerpt from a staff report that came in 2017. But as I recall, the big issue back in 2018 was not anything to do with increase in rents or lack of long-term rentals. It was concern that came with noise, multiple families staying in certain homes, and the disruption that went along with that. And these were rampant problems that had been going on for a number of years, and those residents finally got the ear of council, and there was a change. So here's what the STR regulation looks like right now, not chosen. So there's a definition. Again, the business of a rental, a legal dwelling unit, or a portion of for a period of less than 30 consecutive days, including to a maximum of 4 boarders. Sorry, spelled that wrong. One thing that's interesting here, there's no reference to principal residence in this actual definition, so that might be something we look at. So only one family is permitted in an STR. Business license is mandatory. It's a small fee of $35 annually. Must provide 24/7 contact or the property manager to be given to neighbors. There's a good neighbor brochure that must be in the STR, and there must be parking as well. One thing that's interesting is you must include a business license number on the marketing material, including on the STR site as well. Interesting, when I went and did my search, I don't recall seeing any business license numbers. So that, interestingly, it should change here. So again, so the regulations were changed, but the question might be asked is, was there enforcement? Because I was even hearing as early as 2022, last year, that there's still concerns with noise, disruption, multiple families being in an STR, and also parking as well. So again, the question is, we have the regulations, is there enforcement of them? Okay, so here's some information. So at present, there are 12 business licenses issued for STRs. Okay, but there are clear signs that there are more STRs in Metchosin than 12. Now, the question though is, how many? So this is a screenshot from a company called, it's an online company called AirDNA. And so it's actually a site that's used by people who want to get into the Airbnb or Vrbo business. So they can check out their area, they can check out what the market is, they can check out, are there other STRs out there? This one, interestingly, says 44 STRs, Elsewhere on the site, in Machosen, elsewhere on the site, it says something like 61. A resident, when I was doing the report and who saw an early draft, said there's at least 40, and she gave me a list of those. So it's the exact number is really hard to pinpoint, but it's clearly more than 12. So you can sign up to AirDNA, and you can have a look at the map. I spent time today, I think I counted 55. Maps it out fairly clearly. You got to be careful though that you're not counting the homes in Langford and Colwood as well, because they escalate in terms of the number of them and the density of them in certain areas, which are actually right alongside, which shows an interesting thing. So again, there are many more than 12, it seems, in the chosen. So, just a really quick run through. The site says that the average rental income is over $60,000. Daily average rent is over $260. And according to the site, most of the STRs in Machosen are for entire homes. So that's what the site says. It probably does, the data probably does deserve a little bit more scrubbing in terms of what we know locally. So, but you think we have a problem. So there's a lot of STRs in the CRD, and you can just see the list here. Interesting Soup has quite a number. Be interesting to know relative to population, because ours probably, relative to population is actually quite high. Okay, so as you probably heard today, there was an announcement by the province on regulation of short-term vacation rentals. Here's basically what they proposed. This will be coming in legislation this fall, and the changes are scheduled to take place next year. So here's the big one. STRs can only be offered in the principal residence of the host. That could include a secondary suite or a laneway house. And so that's, I think, what the government is really going to be cracking down on, is corporate ownership of STRs, buying up whole floors. Almost there. But interestingly, it will be the local government too that does the enforcement, but we've been given new tools to do that. So they're new. The fines are going to be raised, and they can be paid per day. The total fines have increased. You can read here. Big thing is a registration, and this is mandatory, and it will give local governments in time the information they need to fully understand who's operating an STR in their jurisdiction. So again, to me, the two big things are crackdown and clarity that it is only a principal residence, and then good information that will come to the local government as well. So unfortunately, it's probably not until next year that we actually see that. So, okay. I'll just run through really quickly
Can I just say, if you're going to address this, I heard on television coverage that the new announcement was only for municipalities.
Thanks.
Over
Yeah.
10,000 or more population.
So it is, but if you're within 15 kilometers of a major population center, this does apply. You're also in. And Machosen is specifically named as one of those localities that this does apply to.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so really quickly, Victoria, they're really annoyed at STRs. I talked with some of the councillors, and they go almost white and nod their heads in terms of the action that they're going to be underway. So it says on average, from what I heard from, again, the McGill study, from 2018 to 2022, almost 80% of the listings active each day in Victoria have been frequently rented entire home listings or ghost hotels. Again, this goes back to the principal residence. So if you're renting the entire house, chances are it's not your principal residence, somebody else owns it. And so here we have all the things that council has directed staff to come back to. So more fines, greater challenges for people who are non-principal residences in terms of getting into the system. But now the province has actually cut that avenue out for people. So. Vancouver, there's, again, as you can expect, a lot of STRs there now. They voted this summer to increase the business license fee from $109 to $1,000. And again, the regulations that were introduced a number of years ago, it's principal residence, and they make it very specific that investment properties cannot be STRs. Interesting thing, both Vancouver and Victoria have huge staffs in terms of managing their STR groups. Tofino. I just want to mention Tofino. So in 2016, they decided that they were going to actively enforce their regulations. And so they voted to make a requirement for a business license, and STRs could only operate in the zones that they were allowed to. And so they gave owners time to comply, come get your business license, make sure you're operating in the right zones, and then they began to enforce. And there was a group of STR owners at the time who said, no, we believe we have a legal non-conforming, an STR can be a legal non-conforming use in our buildings. And the administration said, no, you can't get a license for that. The property owners took Tofino to court, and big long cases these things are, and Tofino's position on STRs and their ability to enforce was upheld. And so those residents, they were not allowed to run their STRs, had to pay court costs, and Tofino's approach was essentially vindicated. One crazy story though, there's still issues there. I ran into somebody recently, and she said her property had been sold. It was going to become short-term rental with the sale, and she began her notice in terms of how to find a new place to move. So there's still issues up there for sure. Okay, just a few more slides. Quebec, I put this in before today's announcement, just to highlight the fact that that's what they do in Quebec, is the province makes sure that there is a registry of property owners with STRs, and that information goes to local governments, and then those local governments, they make the decisions on how to enforce. Okay. So, questions. What should Machosen do? Nothing. Stronger enforcement, higher business fees, or even prohibit. And the one thing to keep in mind is that local governments do have control over what businesses they can license in their jurisdictions, and also zoning control as well. So, here we go. I'll leave. Well, we'll have discussion afterward, but here's some of the sources I pulled out. The McGill studies are quite interesting. They're pretty detailed in certain places, but yeah, easy to read in other places. Okay, so that's the presentation. I almost got it in 10 minutes. And we'll now go to public participation. Thank you. Yeah. Your name? Beth?
Beth Bacon, chosen resident, and I'm interested in the Airbnb topic, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. And I like the notion put forward of the questions that Councillor Shukin had about proof of water, and that's what I'd like to talk to. And you have my letter. I believe you have my letter. And this is standards for proof of water for subdivision approval. I believe that Councillor Shukin poses some important questions in his Councillor's update for the October 16th planning meeting. And Councillor Shukin points out that we have no specifications for the procedure and standard used to prove water. I too would like clarification on how and when testing is done, the current and projected state of our aquifer, and how the potential threat to neighboring wells is considered when approving new wells. Let's make this process transparent and compatible with new information about water resources as it becomes available. And I think I've said before, I was just so proud of our council who showed up for everything water in the Highlands with Gord Baird. So I know you're getting educated as I'm just trying to get educated on water. I think it's a central issue for us right now. And I'm wondering if council would like to invite Gord Baird to come and do a chosen presentation. And I think there'd be other people here that would like to get up to speed on this topic. There was lots to digest there. I would like to sit through it again and I'd get more out of it a second time. And one of the exciting developments that I've learned in Everything Water that is that we can get a 3D chart of the aquifer, where the water is and where the water isn't. And they're doing that, as you'll recall, from ground penetrating radar, like finding buried bodies. But you can find where the water is and isn't, get a 3D chart, and that would be so informative for us, but I think it costs. And I don't know, I did ask Gord Baird, and I would be making it up if I quoted it now. I thought it was something like $10,000 or something like that, but I could be quite off. But if they've got that state-of-the-art advantage, and it would be very cool if we could find the money to have that state-of-the-art advantage. Councillor Shukin also brings up that you know, some wells are approved because they had water in December and January, you know, but what do they have for water in the summer months? And what is the impact on neighbors of more wells? I think these questions are good questions, and we should have the answers to them. So the old groundwater, she ain't what she used to be. And if you look at the chart, it's page 3 of Councillor's update in the agenda package, I find it quite alarming. And I don't know, Councillor Shukin, you could tell me if I'm getting it right, but my interpretation of the chart, it looks like our groundwater is about 10 meters lower than it used to be. And that's, of course, we're dealing with averages, but does anybody have a different understanding of that chart? And so if the district, the option B, if you, option A, I hope you get Gord Baird here. Option B, I'd love it if you get the 3D picture of our aquifer. And option C, the last thing, is if you're not going to do the 3D chart of our groundwater, could we have more test wells? Because we're making, our information, I think, comes from one test well. And when I asked Gord Baird about this, he said that a test well needs to only be 6 inches in diameter. So that shouldn't be a huge thing. And it can be on public or private property. And thank you for considering this.
Thank you, Beth. Nicole first.
Nicole Shukin, I'm the Bond Road resident. I just want to echo what Bev said. I also really like the recommendations around proof of water. And I also want to talk about the, the approval of the stormwater management plan, or the detention ponds. It strikes me that what should be expected from the developers is like a simulation. Like, I'm hoping there will be a visual that actually shows what the detention pond will look like and what the plantings and so on will look like. And so I'm just really hoping that the district will not approve anything before we, like a 21st century simulation or really like high quality visual of the detention pond is included in the plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
I've got the routine down. Bob Burgess, 3837 Duke Road. Usually I forget that. I must be one of the 12 registered.
Fantastic.
I think it was the first one, actually.
Okay.
I'm pleased that I didn't realize you could find how many unlicensed ones there were. I knew there were a few around. I'm surprised by that number. We run ours as a bed and breakfast, self-catering. We're always on site, and I've never had a complaint yet. And I hope that I'm really kind of encouraged by the provincial government's stance. I think this is a good thing. And I'd like it to go back to what it was a few years ago, where it was you had one or two people in a house, and you managed it. So that was all I wanted to say.
Great. Thanks very much, Bob. Just to be clear,
Yeah.
it's not so much a matter of finding the unlicensed ones, but the discrepancy between the licenses we have and the number, of course, shows most are not licensed. So, yeah. And I bet, again, the one thing to emphasize is no one's trying to end short-term rentals, but they want them run properly. Sounds like you run yours properly.
Okay.
So,
All right.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Not that tall. Joanna announced on Sandgate Road. I would just like to thank Jay for all the work he's done into this as somebody impacted our neighborhood by, we're Bruce Beach, so we're very dense. 3 very noisy, long-term, short-term rentals, who one of them averages close to $800 a night. I know there's rules, none of them have been enforced ever. They don't have a license because you just tore it up and threw it away. So I'd like you for your effort. We're concerned because of our location and a lot of older people, every time a house gets sold, it could become a short-term rental. And you said, we have one, its owner. Family owns it, but they don't live there, they rent it out. So that goes against principal residents. They just go couch surfing. So, but it is, if you live with it, it is a harassment. Anyway, and thank you.
Okay, any more for public participation? Okay, so hearing none, we'll keep going with the agenda. Okay, so the next item is the adoption of the Community Planning Committee meeting of September 11th. Any comments? Councillor?
I'll move adoption.
Councillor Green and Councillor Epp, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Receipt of minutes, we have the Bufferland Working Group meeting of September 12th.
The receipt.
Councillor Epp and Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion? Hearing none, move for receipt. Okay, pass, thank you very much. The Parks and Trails Advisory Committee of September 19th, and I'll have a few comments about this once during my councilor's update. And a question actually for the committee as well. So any comments on the PTAS minutes? Hearing none, motion to receive. Mayor Little and Councillor Donaldson. And then finally, the Bufferland Working Group Committee input session of October 4th, and the notes from that session. I'll briefly mention that in my councilor's update as well. Moved by Councillor Donaldson for receipt, and seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Reports. So if you go to page 29, we will have the staff report on the STR regulations. Sorry, page 29. And this is basically background from when the issue was discussed in 2017, 2018. And I've gone through what the regulations were at that time. Now, if the committee's okay, I'd like to have our discussion about what we might do with STRs in the chosen. And I talked and done my spiel in terms of the presentation. Any further comments on this? Councillor?
Well, I think after going through the provincial report today, it's pretty comprehensive and it really covers a lot of the things that we've been concerned about. So I don't know if we need to adopt that or it's just there. what we would, if we have any input into what we do with that.
Yeah, well, that is a great question. And I think the question I would have is if we have a bylaw that doesn't, and all this is contained within the business bylaw. So if we have that information in the business bylaw and it's not, consistent with what the provincial regulations will be, what does that mean? We have some time to get it fixed up, I guess, but that's a question first. And the key one being is I don't know if we're really entirely clear about principal residence in the business bylaw. It's been a week or so since I've gone back and looked at it, but that would be something to look at. So. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Well, I just wonder, the big announcement today really makes a difference to everything. Yeah. So what I was going to say before I saw that was, gee, let's do a little bit more study about the numbers. Now you've discovered many more than we initially had in our notes. So that's the start of that. And then let's see what the province has got. I wonder if the province, they're seemingly pretty serious about the housing issues. And so I expect they will impose bylaws. Otherwise, it'll take forever for all the different municipalities to bring in bylaws. So they may well, have a model set that are just brought in force. I don't know, but I read through it today, and I really appreciate the presentation. And I think now it's time for some thinking and coming back to it. It's hard to put it all together just having read about it today and all of these notes, which were all helpful, by the way. I've been concerned about the nuisance questions. I heard about that before, during the election time, particularly the Weirs Beach situation, but then also the question of the impact on housing. At first, when I thought, there's only 17, and I guess there's not that many. 44 is starting to lift, getting the interest going in terms of the housing question, but it may well be that the provincial regulations will then sort of set us up for that. I guess the question I'll have in the end will be, you mentioned it, we'd be in charge of enforcement, and what additional costs that will have for us, but we just wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, and with the additional costs, I think that's one of the reasons Vancouver upped their costs from 109 to 1,000. I remember listening to that on CBC, and that is to cover things like enforcement. And as what Councillor Gray was saying about the Weirs Beach neighborhood and the challenges they've had for a number of years, it just boggles my mind that the landlord is not on site. If you're going to have an Airbnb and host it, especially in this lovely community, I think that's one thing we should really consider is making sure that is corrected, that the landlord is actually on site. And the fact that there are some properties that have more than one Airbnb is another thing that we'll have to manage somehow. And the licensing, our licensing is pretty inexpensive and has not been updated in many, many years for all sorts of different businesses. But the Weirs Beach neighborhood, it's basically gone to a commercial operation in that little neighborhood. It's something we definitely need to address, and I'm sure there's other situations that we are not totally aware of, and clearly you've uncovered a few more things. So. Yeah, this is timely. I really appreciate what the province has brought down today.
Yeah. Marilyn?
Thank you. Yeah, I was pleased to see what the province said today. So I noted that the fines for host breaking rules would be increased from 1,000 to 3,000 per day. And so if you have a sufficient bylaw with some teeth in it, we could enforce it. And the province has set these guidelines out, and I don't think they could be challenged in a court situation. The principal residence is an important piece, plus one secondary suite or detached unit. The primary residence piece. And as you say, we can be included in that. It's up to the municipality within
a radius of the populations of 10,000. So we tick all the boxes. We've had significant letters from residents, particularly in the Weir Beach area, that they haven't been listened to in the past, and I think we should move on moving forward. And I'm just wondering, what are the next steps? Councillor Shukin, should we ask the planner to come back with a report for amendments to Bylaw 647, including fees and fines? Is that where you're going with this? I think the time is ripe with the province coming down with this. I think this is the time for us. And as you stated, we did tell Minister Cowan that we were going to have this discussion and make some changes to it. So I commend you for that.
Thank you. There are three pillars that I could see in terms of topics to maybe ask staff to come back for more information. One is a recommendation on fees in terms of the annual business license fee. The other one is around enforcement. So not only you pay a fine if you don't pay your business license fee, but then also if you're operating an illegal Airbnb. And then the other question I have is the consistency part in terms of what our bylaw says and where the province is going. We should actually see some text from the province in the coming weeks, because it's going to be introduced in the legislature. So those three things, and there's probably others as well. But I have to say the things in terms of enforcement that always get me going is if the environment is being harmed and if neighbors are being impacted. And I would like to see an enforcement campaign underway next year when the rules are set with the province, and making sure that those who have STRs are the people who actually should have them. And of course, one of the interesting things is that if you have somebody who's a non-principal owner and suddenly they find that they can't run the STR, they're either going to sell the place or turn it into ideally a long-term rental. So that's part of one of the hopeful outcomes of this. And especially in a bigger place like Victoria, that's very much what they're counting on. So any further comments? I have a motion I might make.
Yeah, just not anxious to waste staff time if the province is coming with legislation, the week after next. We can get a look at that, and that would inform the activities. I mean, it's a big topic and it's not going away, and lots is coming towards it, I expect.
Yeah, that might be fair enough. What I was going to, I can hold, that might actually be a good thing to do, subject to your thoughts. But I was going to make a motion to request a report from staff in terms of fees, the consistency issue, and then enforcement. Actually, you know what? I feel like we could probably make it now, pending the release of the legislation and the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we do that? I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Spiller, you're okay. Great. Seconded by Mayor Little. Discussion.
Can you just get the motion again? Sorry.
So the motion is that council directs staff to return with a report about the consistency issue in terms of our bylaw and provincial legislation and regulation, recommendations on fees, business license fees, and recommendation on enforcement. And that this be done following the release of more information from the provincial government. Good. Okay.
Just a question. So you're talking about consistency between our bylaw 647 and the provincial legislation. Is that what you're talking? So that they match and okay.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
And again, the big thing was the clarification on the principal, the fact that it has to be a principal residence. And it may be there, but I seem to recall it's not. So just getting that consistent would be good. So there's no loopholes for, yeah.
And they also talk about the remaining legal non-conforming rules as well, which I think would be great to have information on that, as well as the primary residence, principal residence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And I think that's all within the realm of, again, consistency. So, yeah. Okay. Further comments? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. Thank you very much. Carried. Okay. Okay. Councillor Shukin. So the Bufferland Working Group held its second community information session. Big thanks to Councillor Donaldson for chairing that session as I was incapacitated. And we had a bunch of great input from the community and some new ideas, which we kind of wish we'd come a little earlier, but that's okay. We're processing them right now. One of the issues that was put out to the working group was the potential of carbon credits from the bufferland. And I have made some inquiries into the Coastal Douglas Fir Conservation Partnership to learn more about the realities of that. And so what I understand is there's can be a significant upfront cost in terms of verifying the actual asset you have. I've heard something in the order, sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually verify that, but the potential for credits, if it's that much, might be millions of dollars. I have a hard time thinking we're going to see that with the bufferland. It's only 100 acres. The voluntary carbon offsets schemes that I've heard of, they involve big tracts of land, 40,000 hectares, which is over 100,000 acres. So, but the people at the Conservation Partnership, they were keen about the project. So I think they're going to get back to us with, again, testing the realities of that. So, yeah. The goal of the working group is to have a report filed so it can be on council's agenda next week. And we've made a lot of progress on that, and we have to get it filed for Wednesday. So thank you for your comments, Councillor Donaldson. Okay. And again, and a big thanks to the working group members. So Bonnie Weaver, Brian Grant, Anna Hall, Karen Huffman, Richard Simpson, Gary Smurfett, and Bailey Spiteri, and Councillor Johnson, and a great group of people, and everyone has just worked really well together. So, okay, so next item is an information request and policy direction around proof of water. Now, I'll apologize to Ms. Tarnowski if I've come off half-cocked on this, but as I reviewed the subdivision servicing bylaw, there's nothing specific in terms of how to improve water. There's a minimum standard there, which is 3,400 liters a day, which as I figured it works out to about half a US gallon flow rate, which is, that's not great, but it can keep you going. Now, what we've also seen, it's anecdotal, but quantitative too, in terms of the number of times you see the water truck traveling through Machosen. That just has increased. I've talked to the water truck guys personally, and they just know that Machosen has become an increasingly growing customer. And again, Bev was pointing out the table at the last part here, and it clearly shows a decline in the water table. And what you're seeing in the green line, if you flip over, is the blue is the general range, but the green line is the historic daily mean, which again, that incorporates data over time. The red line is the current reading. So there's a significant drop. What I'm concerned about and would like to see a specific policy on is how we test and verify that there is actually proof of water. And again, easy thing to do in the rainy months, but what do you have in the summer months? And so what I've put forward here is a motion that talks about developing a policy and procedure for improving water in new subdivisions. And any of your comments, I can support the motion, or somebody else can. Any comments? So, sorry.
So Councillor Shukin, if I may suggest, instead of making it a policy, we still have the subdivision servicing bylaw that has been amended, hasn't been adopted, that we hire a professional consultant who can speak or help us with the language of not writing or specifying a particular amount, quantity, because that will change. Or rather than doing that, we'll reference a standard that, whatever standard that the profession uses, so that we include that in the bylaw. It says we'll test according to this acceptable standard.
Okay.
That's going to be part of the bylaw, which is obviously going to be stronger than a policy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel that would be interesting to do. For some reason, I feel like a policy fits this, though, and again, subject to your thoughts. And a policy, to me, it can be passed much more quickly and can be adapted, which can also be a negative sometimes. Yeah. Committee, any further thoughts? Councillor.
Yeah, I think it's a very important question, approving the wells. What I wasn't sure of was, do we have an operational standard at the moment? In other words, do we always test them, at the end of the summer? In other words, it says it must be proved to the satisfaction of the municipal engineer. So how is the municipal engineer satisfied? It may not be a policy, it may just be what our practice is, and I just don't know what that is. So anyway, just some clarity on that question would be helpful. I think it's terribly important that the proof of wells be done in a way that will provide water for the person who's got the lot, but has least impact on the neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so when I looked at it, I was initially thinking, well, maybe it's a staff report we need. Like, can you fill that in here that this is a list of interesting things, but what are the items that we need to have in a bylaw? So what are the elements of the policy, and what might they be? When I looked at the dry months, for example, I'm not expert in it, but I would think not testing in May, but more like we would be testing in September at the end of the dry season, not the beginning. But I don't know what the usual practices are. But I certainly support the idea of us getting a handle on this if we don't already have a standard practice.
So, thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I like the idea of getting a consultant, but I'm wondering if there's other jurisdictions, other districts that have already done the work on this. And that we could be guided by, not in favor of reinventing the wheel, when we don't have to, maybe cost effective to look to other jurisdictions to see what they've done. But certainly we need to get a handle on this. I would also be in favor of petitioning the province for an additional observation well. And that I think that would, a motion tonight to that effect would be really nice, so that we could send a letter. If I'm not mistaken, an additional observation well was promised. And I think they should follow through on their promises. That would really help with gathering metrics. So I haven't done any research myself on different jurisdictions, but I'm sure somebody within BC has done this legwork. Mm-hmm. It'd be great to be able to be guided by that.
Okay. So, Mayor Little, is that a motion from you that we send a letter to the provincial government, the right parties, requesting
a petition for an additional observation well for Aquifer 606?
Okay. Mayor Little has made a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Councillor John, second. Any discussion on that? Councillor Gray?
Do we need 1, 2, 3, 4? How many? This aquifer is enormous. And I think when we went to the meeting in Highlands, there were numerous observation wells at, I guess, a smaller aquifer. So maybe we could get to whatever the standard would be for this size. The province promised it previously. In what context, I wonder? Mayor Littleton, is that?
I can't remember. I really can't remember. It was from the Aquifer 606 water day that we had in 2019, so I can't remember specifics. I'd be happy with one additional one.
Yeah.
But if we could get additional observation wells, plural, that would be great too.
And I think there's a way of crafting the letter so that, again, we know we need more information on this. We know it's changing, and we'd like to hear your thoughts on how to get more information.
Councillor Shukin, there was a well on Arden Road inactive since 2006, but if there is a drilled provincial observation well there, that could be reactivated.
Okay. Yep.
So I'm in favor of the motion. It was just a question of wells plural possibly is the need.
Yeah. No, and that is true. We saw that with the Beckingham, the information that came from the Beckingham folks, that they referenced the well on Arden Road that had been decommissioned. So, okay. So I think a letter to the provincial government requesting more information or another well at the very least, but yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Now, can I ask Ms. Tarnowski again, any thoughts on where we should go with this? And I'm happy to make it a bylaw if that works, if it's expedient, and we're not talking about it a year from now.
I would strongly suggest that we put it as part of bylaw, really twofold. One is that we have a amended bylaw that's been sitting for several years, that still awaiting adoption. And also that it'll be stronger than a policy and bylaw, and we'll make sure that it's very difficult to challenge. And also to again, going back to my reference of not putting a specific quantity, because standards change all the time. We don't want to be amending the bylaw constantly to update the quantity, but just really referencing the standard of whatever professional acceptable standard is for water.
Follow-up question. So you mentioned there was a bylaw that has been waiting to be amended or passed?
Yeah, the subdivision servicing bylaw.
Okay.
There's been an amendment to it.
Oh, okay.
For at least 3 years now.
Oh, wasn't aware. Okay, sounds good. Okay. I feel like a motion is okay, Mr. Tarnowski, one more time. I think a staff report might be worth putting in, because I think we have to iron out some of the details.
So can you clarify that staff report for the staff report for?
Well, I think we're looking at what sort of detail we would put into the bylaw, and also back to what Mayor Little was saying, going out and seeing what other jurisdictions have done. And I think we also have to keep in mind that we might want to do our own thing as well. So I did talk with Councillor Baird about what Highlands does, and they actually have, I believe they have a 72-hour pump test. So that means you're running the well for 3 days to verify the water. And he's he kind of rolled his eyes in horror about the amount of water used. But so is that our standard? Again, when is the testing done? As I understand it, it used to be done whenever the developer felt they could do it. And I just, we're in a different environment now, so that the time I think is really crucial. So, Councillor Craig,
Would you like a motion for a staff report?
please.
So I would move that we ask for a staff report on best practices for improving water in new subdivisions in preparation for revising the subdivision servicing bylaw.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If someone seconds it, I'm Just say one word to it. You'll second it? Yeah, so then I think where we could do is include what Mary Little's talked about, which is checking other places where they're doing.
Yeah.
Caution on that, but for sure, check that out,
Yeah.
and then look at specific amendments.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a nice list here to work from in your note.
Beverly?
Also, since we're doing it with other bylaws as well, we should pass this by our legal counsel, just to make sure it's foolproof. Since we're doing it with all the other bylaws, and I like the idea that this is a bylaw as opposed to a policy. It has more teeth as a bylaw.
Gotcha. Okay, further discussion on this motion from Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor App, and call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, final item on my report is the meeting of the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee of September 19th, and I did this by phone while I was at UBCM. A question for the committee, and Mark Atherton, who's the chair of PTAS, asked me to ask you specifically. There has been a request for a new roadside trail on Duke Road East. This is essentially along Duke Road East, all the way from where east becomes west, and then all the way up to the Chosen Road. Mark believes that there is significant potential to do this, and there is a lot of neighbor and resident support for this. Jeanette McMillan has got a petition together, and I think she's got something about 150 names. So people who are interested in this, and also who have said, and we'll hold them to this, that they will also help maintain the trail as well. So the question that Mark has asked is, any comments from the planning committee? Do you oppose it? Do you think it has potential? Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, and I mentioned the history of that section. If you actually spoke, I'm surprised Mark doesn't know this, but from Duke Road East, that's coming this way on Chosen Road, there is a roadside trail. There is cloth down. There was $9,000 worth of gravel screenings put down. Mr. Harold Paulkin was part of putting that in. What you can see now is a lovely shoulder of gravel screenings. So it's, all the organic matters there and stuff like that. So are these neighbors looking for something that's separate from the road boulevard area, like something that's delineated? Because we already have put taxpayers' dollars, and a lot of labor has gone into that. So it is walkable. It's very wide. It did stop at one point because there's some pretty curvy turns, just where there's a trail that goes through now, affectionately known as the Dunn Trail. It goes right towards Chapel Heights. But I would be mindful of not spending more money when we don't need to. So what exactly is it they're looking for? Are they looking for something that's more designated, or? Yeah,
well, there was a recognition that there are parts of that area that are suitable and ready to go almost as a roadside trail, and then other parts that need some work. So what Mr. Atherton was going to do was, pending no big objections from us, he was going to do a bit of a feasibility report or plan, and then actually bring that back to PTAS in terms of assessing priorities, and of course it would come to council in terms of budget. So there's a bit of a step toward that. PTAS might have, I think, some budget in terms of what the park maintenance, what the trail maintenance budget is, but they won't have time to do anything with it this year, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. Now, thanks, Councillor Donaldson. I mean, I vaguely remember this and vaguely remember the talk. So let me bring that back to Mark. It'd be great if maybe he talked to you,
he could, or he could talk to one of the previous coordinators that was involved with it.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. Yeah, it was only brought up quite vaguely, so I'm not fully sure if people know the work that has been previously underway.
So another question, this particular neighbor organization, I guess they're quite well organized and have put a lot of thought into things. They have different sections of trail networks that they kind of wanted to link some of the trails. There's quite a few trails over that area. One of the critical ones, and I think it was Jeanette that actually came in and spoke at the podium on public participation, was right on Duke Road near where she lives. And there isn't a lot of room there. So is that a priority over the other one, or which ones are they actually looking at as first, second, and third sort of priorities?
This one seems to be amongst the priorities. This is all of the neighbors seem to be behind this one. It's an interesting group because there's a Duke Road East Trail group, then there's the Albert Head group, and some of them are together doing both. So yeah, yeah.
I just, there's just a lot of areas where we've talked about adding trails. There's the Hans Helgeson one along there, and as well as this. And I mean, the more the better, so we can manage to fund them. But one thing that really does come up, it certainly has come up with the Pears Road Trail, is the maintenance. And as you say, the residents, say, well, they would maintain it, but they said that trail as well. I think, for the district, we don't have the public works staff that continue to maintain more and more roadside trails. It's a lot of hours. So I think council is something council needs to look at, and along with approving more investigation into adding more trails is exactly how we're prepared financially to maintain them.
Yeah, it's a great point. Councillor Johnson.
On that, and thank you, Councillor, for bringing up the one near the school there. That's critical. We also have on the books improvement of a section of trail in the Machosen Park, and it keeps getting stalled because of one particular neighbor. This is a safety issue. We're getting into the rainy, muddy season now, and it's the safety issue. As an equestrian, we stop riding in the muddy areas for obvious reasons, just erosion and again, safety. But for people who hike through there or run through there, it gets very slippery and muddy. This is a section, and you are aware of the area I'm speaking of. It is also, the roots are getting more and more exposed, and if we don't deal with it, those trees will become unearthed. Mm-hmm. So I implore us to look at the priority of dealing with what we've got in front of us first. Mm-hmm. That is a safety factor. It was last term we were even talking about this. I don't know why it's taking so long for us to deal with this. I know PTAS is on board with it, and we need to start prioritizing some things. Clearly, we have a strategic plan, and Councillor has just referenced some of the important parts of that. Before we start doing other ones, we need to clear up some of our trail to-do lists, and that's one that really needs to be addressed soon. I did see something in the minutes, I think, of the PTAS about that. I'm not sure where we are and why it's still stalled.
Yeah, I just really quickly will address that. Yeah, there was, I don't know if I'd call it a confrontation, probably would, where a PTAS member was out putting gravel on the trail. The landowner came out and the work stopped. Now what PTAS has asked, and Suman, I need to make sure that you have this, but if there is such an encounter again, like PTAS members will back off and they will ask the public works crew to do the work. So and that we think is appropriate. We're volunteers as opposed to paid staff, and we can take measures as we need to in terms of dealing with the landowner. So yeah, so that's was the request to PTAS, but they very much know it is something that needs to be done. We know the landowner's position, but we've also heard many other complaints as well, more so than his complaint that the work is actually being done. So, okay. So, but to the question of Duke Road, but Councillor.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I think it's a great idea, and it's kind of very nice that the local residents have brought it forward in the way they have, and that PTAS has taken a look at it. By the way, I noticed the amount of volunteer hours of PTAS. That's incredible. So big thanks to them. But when I sort of remember the discussion we had, and I looked back on the minutes, and I guess the motion didn't exactly say this, but I was thinking that if PTAS would look at this proposal, which included this Duke Road Trail, but also the Machosen Connector Trail, and give us some idea of the master plan.
Yeah.
How does this fit? In other words, is this the next one or the one after? And I'm speaking really to Councillor Donaldson's point, I think, about the priority. So I'm super keen, but I'd like to be sort of feel like, yeah, within the plan, this is where we're going next. On the other hand, if Mark, the chair of the committee, is saying, well, I just want authority, are you interested enough to take a look and give us some ideas? I would say certainly, but I'd like to come back to us with some idea of within the master plan, how's that fit?
Yeah.
Not negative, just how would you order it? And I'm hearing about that one particular fix that needs to be done that we already know about, but then also Councillor Epps raised these other places. So I'm not at all negative, but just wanting to sort out the order in which things should be done.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be, I've driven along, of course, the road there, and wondering about, is the land all there? Or do we need to, are we encroaching on people's properties, that sort of thing? There looks like difficult spots, and I guess that's what the feasibility would be looking at. That's a lot to say. I'd like to see it nested in a bigger question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. This is really great input, and good on Mark for asking, because it's, And best of all, you can actually watch your comments through the YouTube channel. But I will be in touch with Mark, and he probably, I'm sure he's aware of the work that has been done before, and I probably just missed it. But it might be good for a refresher just to, make sure where things are at. Okay, thank you very much. I just go through, as I mentioned, next point is discussions on continuing with the Albert Head Group. One thing that the PTAS will have several members opening up this year, and this is a really hands-on group, and so there was a request that if new applications come in, that PTAS get a chance to maybe vet them and just make sure they know. So, and PTAS had a booth at Machosen Day. I didn't get a chance to hang out all that much, but I think it was quite successful. The Parks of the Nation guidelines are being updated. I think they're almost done. Ideally one of the successes that our Trails Coordinator Ryan Carter will have is a memorial bench that should be ready to be installed. And this is along Duke Road actually as well. So that I think has cleared almost all the hurdles and is just ready for public works support when they're able to. So the PTAS folks went out and they identified the boundaries of Sea Spray, Graceland Pocket Parks. As to what happens to these parks, that remains to be seen. The Albert Head folks did say they were interested in rejuvenating them, and to me that's work that they can do. It'd be great for them to give the district a heads up that they're going to come in and do some work, whether it's pull out dead logs or just clean it up from garbage or whatnot. But they have identified that as an area where they're interested in. So one other thing too, they also are aware of the neighbors in that area and very sensitive that those neighbors be contacted in terms of any work that's going on there. So I'll continue to encourage that. Again, our great Trails Coordinator, who is hopefully falling into the history of all the other wonderful Trails Coordinators we've had. And as you were saying, Councillor Gray, lots of volunteer hours that have been put in. And final point is great input that PTAS had in terms of the Centre Mountain Stormwater Plan as well. They thought quite deeply about that. So, and our engineer Al Hurley has their report. So that's it for my updates. And one final thing is just to note the letter from Ms. Beth Bacon, who we heard from earlier. So thank you very much, Beth. And hearing no Councillor Ray.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? And we are adjourned.